Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Adya. I just have a question about the idea of, you're talking about the earnestness shows up and this digging, going further back into consciousness. But is a point of this collapsing of the dualistic? What is the role of grace that plays in this?
I can answer the question. I would love to ask you a secondary question, however.
Sure.
Is where is the question coming from in you?
My earnestness was my moment of reading the word enlightenment came from this unity experience of seeing God in everything.
Yeah.
And it was very clear. I can very clearly tap into it still. But this experience was I was completely unaware.
Yes.
Of it before.
You weren't looking for it.
No.
You weren't doing anything, right?
It opened up my earnestness, or it showed me my earnestness, and it also started me in what you call this digging. This is what I've set my life up for. Now it's complete, and because of this experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I've walked through every level of an experience of consciousness since then, of and enjoy it and understand it, but I don't ask for it. I don't say, oh, I read, I am that, and I can dig back, and then I see this point of consciousness, and this unity opens. I don't. Right. It's not linear like that for me.
Yes. Well, that's not at all uncommon, actually. Okay, so I'm going to answer it, but I'm going to answer it on the air, okay?
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks for calling in with this question. It's lovely, Patricia.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, this is a very important point, I think, that Patricia's bringing up here. The whole domain of grace. And grace is just a way of saying that things that happen when you don't expect them to happen, things that you don't intend to happen. As Patricia said, this whole thing for her seems to be quite nonlinear. It's not like you look for this and then you find this and then you look deeper and you find something else and you look deeper and you find something else, that it's not linear. Well, when you talk about it or you write about it, it often can sound very, very linear. And sometimes for some people it actually kind of unfolds that way. But for most human beings, it's not really a completely linear process at all. And grace, or those moments where something simply happens and you can't say why it happens, is, pretty much all revelation comes as a moment of grace. We can't actually make anything happen. We can't make a moment of revelation happen. We can't produce a moment of revelation. It just does not work that way. That doesn't mean that whatever efforts or practices or sadhana you are inspired to participate in has no impact upon grace. Everything is interconnected with everything else. So sometimes you'll hear some people say, or some teachers say, that you're, no matter what you do, it has nothing at all to do with what you realize, And that's, to me, a profound misunderstanding of how everything works, that everything is interconnected with everything else. Everything affects everything else. Everything you do affects everything. So to say that you could be doing spiritual practice and that it would have no effect whatsoever on grace is to misunderstand the nature of how existence works. However, it has no direct causal effect, which means it doesn't work in a linear fashion, that if I do this, this will happen, and then I do that, and that will happen. Since everything, literally everything, is interconnected and inter-influencing everything else, you can't have one thing that has one cause that has a specific result. There's no direct cause and then direct effect. There are an infinite number of indirect causes and indirect effects. So, I'm sure many of you, most of you, have had the experience that the greatest understandings that you have come out of the blue, seemingly, come out of nowhere, come when you least expect them. Often comes when you're not making any effort, when you're not trying. Right? It reminds me of when Einstein was trying to solve before he came up with the theory of relativity, and he was trying to solve this whole dilemma of light and gravity and time and space, and he'd been pondering this for years and years and years and years and years, of just racking his mind and pondering it and pondering it and pondering it and pondering it. And one day he's out overlooking the town, talking with a friend, and their conversation becomes kind of casual and easy. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this conversation, boom, out of nowhere, as a flash of grace, he understands the understanding he'd sought for years and years and years and years. Suddenly, in a flash, he gets it. He understands it all. And he says, thank you, thank you, thank you. And he hugs his friend and he says, thank you. And he runs off. And his friend has no idea what even happened. Now, we could say, yes, grace just happens like that. It comes out of the blue. But would it have happened if if Einstein said, well, I have this question about the speed of light and time and space, and, oh, well, I can't solve it, so I'll just wait for it to solve itself. If he just sort of copped out like that, he would have never discovered anything, probably. So there is some way in which our participation in our own evolution, in our own awakening, is important. Nisargadatta said it was important, as he constantly emphasized the need for earnestness. But also, the element of grace is very important. The element of letting go. There's nothing in Nisargadatta's teaching or my teaching which is saying this is exactly how you make that happen. This is how you make awakening happen. You do this and this and this and like completing an equation, this will happen. No, it's like you do this practice and it goes into the overall mix of your psyche, of your experience, and it has its influence. But it's an influence is largely unconscious to you. It's largely unknown to you. You only know its influence when, boom, a moment of grace arises. As I said, often those moments just come unbidden, unasked for, and certainly unknown. So the element of grace is all important, and it's an important counterweight to those who get too tight with their pursuit of enlightenment. You know, if you get too tight, if you're trying to control it too much, it means you've forgotten about the element of grace and how important it is and how almost all true revelation comes in moments of grace. But if you just say to yourself, okay, everything comes from grace, therefore I don't need to do anything at all, I'll just forget about all this and it'll happen or it won't happen, that's a misunderstanding of how grace works too. You can't control grace, but what you do can participate in the arising of grace. So the necessariness for earnestness and effortlessness. Being sincere, but being open enough to allow things to happen that you can't make happen, that you don't know how they happen. Being open enough and relaxed enough to allow reality to find you, to come to you. So it's a really important part that Patricia brought up that I think is really important. And her experience obviously bears this out, that her revelations come as moments of grace. My revelations have always come at moments of grace too. But I also did a whole heck of a lot of very serious spiritual practice, but they usually happened when I was really relaxed about it. When I was in a state of ease rather than